The misunderstanding that started everything. Cameras flashed like lightning that night. It was a charity gala in Los Angeles, full of laughter, champagne, and the usual noise of fame. Sandra Bullock stood near the edge of the red carpet, smiling politely, answering questions about her new movie. But behind her calm expression, something heavy rested on her heart. Keanu Reeves was there too, quiet as always, gentle, humble, polite, the man everyone called mysterious. He didn't speak much, didn't linger for photos, just smiled softly and moved through the crowd like a shadow that didn't need to be seen. People thought their friendship had ended long ago. They had worked together years back, shared laughter, long conversations, and maybe something more, something the world could never label. But time, fame, and silence had changed everything. That night, when Sandra saw Keanu across the room, her chest tightened. He looked the same, calm eyes, quiet smile, but distant. Too distant. A journalist noticed her glance and whispered to her, "You don't talk anymore?" Sandra forced a smile. "He's busy. I guess we just grew apart." But the truth was simpler. She believed Keanu had stopped caring, that his silence meant coldness, that his distance was rejection. Later that night, during the charity dinner, fate placed them at the same table. It was awkward at first. Polite nods, half smiles, short answers. Keanu complimented her movie. She thanked him and looked away. Every word between them felt like walking on glass. Then, during dessert, the host invited people to share stories about kindness and change. One by one, celebrities stood up, speaking about causes they supported or moments that shaped them. When it was Keanu's turn, he stood slowly. No script, no rehearsed lines. The room fell silent. "I was asked to speak about kindness," he began softly. "But I think it's more about how we remember it when it's gone." His eyes swept the room but didn't linger on anyone, except for a moment. "On Sandra. Years ago," he continued, "someone told me that kindness isn't loud. It's in the small things, remembering a birthday no one else did, leaving food at someone's door without signing your name, forgiving someone who didn't even ask for it." He paused. That person was sitting at this table tonight. A quiet murmur spread through the crowd. Sandra's breath caught. Keanu smiled gently, almost shyly. "She probably doesn't remember it, but I do." He told the story of how, during one of their first film shoots, Sandra had noticed him skipping lunch. She thought he was just busy, but later, she quietly ordered food for him and left it in his trailer without a note. It was a simple act, something she'd forgotten, but he hadn't. "That day," he said, "I realized something important. Silence isn't always cold. Sometimes it's just the space people need to notice what truly matters." The room went completely still. Sandra stared at him, her eyes wide. She remembered that day, how young they both were, how she had just wanted to be kind. She had no idea it had stayed with him all these years. After the applause, Keanu sat down quietly, as if he hadn't just peeled open his heart for the world. When the dinner ended, Sandra found herself standing beside him near the exit. The words wouldn't come. She wanted to say sorry for believing he was cold, for assuming silence meant distance. But all that came out was, "I didn't know you remembered that." He looked at her softly. "I remember everything that comes from kindness," he said. There was no drama, no sudden confession, just a quiet truth that felt heavier than any speech. As they stood there in the glow of the evening lights, something shifted between them, not romance, not nostalgia, but understanding. And for the first time in years, Sandra realized that Keanu wasn't cold at all. He was just. Still, he didn't love loudly. He loved quietly. The way rain falls on a roof you didn't notice was dry. But sometimes, quiet love leaves the deepest sound. When silence became a wall. Next few days after the gala were full of headlines, interviews, and whispers. The internet buzzed with clips of Keanu's speech, calling it the most heartfelt moment of the night. Fans wrote stories, magazines guessed meanings, and journalists tried to find out who he had been talking about. Sandra avoided it all. She didn't want to see herself become part of another rumor. But deep down, her heart replayed his words again and again. Silence isn't always cold. She couldn't forget the way he looked at her when he said it. For years, she had believed that Keanu had quietly walked out of her life, that his kindness meant disinterest, that he simply didn't care the way she did. Now she wasn't so sure. One evening, as she sat alone in her kitchen with a cup of tea, her phone buzzed. It was a message from him. Thank you for being there that night. It meant more than I can say. She stared at the message for a long moment, her heart racing. She wanted to reply immediately, but her fingers froze. What was she supposed to say? You left me confused for years? You made me feel invisible? Or simply you're welcome? Finally, she typed, your speech was beautiful. I didn't know you remembered all that. His reply came after a few minutes. Some things don't fade, even when people do. And that was it. No calls, no long conversation. Just quiet truth, the kind he was known for. But the message didn't bring peace. It brought more questions. Over the next few weeks, they met again. Not in public, not on red carpets, but by accident. Once at a film studio, once at a coffee shop near Sunset Boulevard. Every time, there was that same quiet tension, warm but unsure, like two people standing on opposite sides of a bridge, afraid to take the first step. Then came the interview. Sandra had been promoting her new film when a journalist, eager for clicks, asked, people say Keanu still talks about you with a lot of respect. Do you ever wish things were different between you two? The question caught her off guard. For a moment, she smiled politely, but then she said something she hadn't planned. Keanu's one of the kindest people I've ever met, she said softly. But kindness can sometimes feel like distance when you don't understand it. The interviewer leaned forward. Are you saying he was cold to you? She hesitated. The lights, the microphones, the pressure, everything made her words come out softer than she meant. I think he keeps his heart very guarded. It's not coldness, maybe just silence. The clip spread like wildfire. Within hours, articles appeared everywhere. Sandra Bullock says Keanu Reeves was cold and distant. Keanu saw it the next morning. He didn't get angry. He didn't post anything or call his publicist. Instead, he went for a long ride on his motorcycle, letting the wind carry his thoughts. He knew what she meant, but the world did in single quotes. Later that evening, Sandra's phone rang. It was Keanu. Hey, his voice came through, calm but low. I'm sorry, she said immediately. They twisted it. I didn't mean it like that. I know, he said softly. You never do, she sighed. I shouldn't have said anything. I didn't know how to explain you. He chuckled lightly. Most people don't. There was a long pause. You think I'm cold, he said finally. No, she whispered. I think you're careful, and sometimes that feels like distance. Maybe I learned to be careful, he said quietly. When you lose too many people, silence starts feeling safer than words. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She knew about his losses, his best friend, his sister, the love he never got to keep. He had been through more pain than most could imagine, and yet he never complained. He just carried it quietly. You don't have to carry it alone, she said gently. I know, he replied. But sometimes silence is how I stay gentle. Those words hit her deeper than anything else he had ever said. For a long time, neither spoke. The line stayed open, filled only with breathing. To people connected by something fragile and real. When the call ended, Sandra sat in the dark, staring at her phone, realizing she had spent years mistaking peace for absence. The next morning, while the world still gossiped, Keanu posted something rare on social media. Just a single sentence on a black background. Being quiet doesn't mean not caring. It was simple, honest, and it silenced everyone. The apology that never made headlinist world was watching again. The internet took Keanu's post, being quiet doesn't mean not caring, and turned it into a wave of admiration. Fans called him the gentle truth teller. Every comment praised his humility and grace. But behind all the noise, there was a silence between him and Sandra that no one else could hear. A week passed. Sandra hadn't called. She didn't know what to say. The world was busy turning his words into quotes, but she was stuck replaying their last conversation, the weight of her misunderstanding pressing on her chest. One evening, she decided to go see him. No interviews, no cameras, no publicists. Just her, a car, and a heart full of things she should have said years ago. His house sat at the edge of the city, surrounded by tall trees, quiet and still, just like him. When she arrived, The gate was half open. She parked her car and walked up the stone path, her hands trembling. The lights inside were warm. Through the window, she saw him sitting at a piano, fingers gliding softly over the keys. The melody was slow and fragile, like a memory that didn't know how to heal. She knocked. Keanu looked up, surprised but not startled. When he opened the door, she saw that same calm look, the one that made people think he was distant, but she now knew was just peace. "Hi," she said quietly. He smiled a little. "Hi, I should have called," she said. "You're here now," he replied softly. They sat in his living room, surrounded by the soft hum of silence. A candle burned faintly on the table. She looked at him, the same man she had once thought was cold, now sitting there with the warmth of someone who never stopped caring. "I owe you an apology," she began. He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," she said, voice shaking. "I let the world twist what I said. I let them turn my confusion into judgment, and that wasn't fair to you." He was quiet for a moment before answering. "You didn't do it on purpose." "Still," she said softly, "I hurt you." His eyes softened. "No, Sandra. You reminded me that even silence can be misunderstood. And maybe that's my fault too. Maybe I made you feel unseen." Her throat tightened. "You didn't make me feel unseen, Keanu. I just didn't know how to see quiet love. I thought love was supposed to be loud, constant messages, big gestures, the kind that fills the room. But you love differently, and I didn't know how to understand that." He looked down, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "Maybe I should have said more. Maybe we both should have," she whispered her for a while. Neither spoke. The room felt heavy, but not sad, more like a wound finally being cleaned. Then Keanu stood up, walked to a bookshelf, and pulled out an old photograph. It was from years ago, them on the set of their first film, laughing. She was mid-laugh, and he was looking at her instead of the camera. "You kept this?" she asked softly. "Always," he said. "Because that day, you made me laugh after a year of not knowing how." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know that. You didn't need to," he said. "You were just being you. That's what kindness is. It doesn't ask for attention." She smiled through her tears. "And here I was thinking you were cold." He chuckled gently. "I was just trying not to melt." They both laughed, quietly, softly, like people who had forgotten how for a long time. As the laughter faded, Sandra leaned back and sighed. "I miss when everything wasn't this loud. When we could just be." "We still can," he said. "If we choose to." "How?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes calm. "By remembering that not every connection needs to be explained. Some just need to be felt." Outside, the city lights shimmered through the trees. The night was quiet, but not empty. It carried the kind of stillness that heals. Before she left, she turned at the door and said softly, "Thank you for not giving up on kindness, even when people misunderstand it." He smiled. "Thank you for finally seeing it." The next morning, tabloids tried to guess what had happened between them that night. They wrote wild stories, quoting sources close to both actors, but none of it was true, because what really happened was something no article could describe. Two old souls finally learning how to speak in the same language again, and in that quiet house. Long after she left, Keanu sat at the piano once more. He began to play the same melody, but this time, it didn't sound like sadness. It sounded like peace. When kindness turned into distance for a while, things felt lighter. Their friendship had found a gentle rhythm again, calls that came without reason, quiet dinners with no cameras, text messages that said little but meant everything. Sandra and Keanu weren't trying to fix the past anymore. They were simply trying to understand it. But peace, like glass, breaks easily in a world that never stops watching. It began with an innocent photo. A fan spotted them together at a small cafe in West Hollywood. Keanu was smiling, Sandra was laughing, and within hours, the picture was everywhere. The internet crowned them the love story that should have happened. Hashtags trended, videos compiled their old interviews, and every outlet demanded answers. Sandra's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Her publicist warned her that a rumor storm was coming. She didn't care, not until one headline crossed the line. Sandra Bullock finally wins Keanu Reeves' heart. She stared at the words for a long time, anger mixing with sadness. She wasn't an object to be won. She wasn't someone's story. When she called Keanu that night, her voice trembled. They're turning it into something fake again. His voice on the other end was calm, like it always was. I know, it'll pass, but it never really passes, she said. They keep digging. They make stories out of silence. They don't care what it costs. He sighed softly. We can't control what they write. Maybe not, she whispered. But we can control what we give them. You mean distance? He said quietly. She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. The next week, she stopped replying as often. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. She canceled a dinner, then another. She told herself it was just temporary, that she needed space. But deep down, she was afraid that the world would ruin the one pure thing they still had left. Keanu noticed, of course. He always did. He didn't chase, though. He respected space the way other people respected walls. One evening, he dropped off a letter at her house. Not an email, not a message, but an actual letter. The handwriting was his, neat and quiet. Dear Sandra, I understand silence better than anyone, so I won't fight it. I just hope your quiet isn't the kind that hurts. If you need peace, take it. I'll be here, not waiting, just existing in the same truth we shared. Some friendships don't break. They just stand still until the noise dies down. Keanu read it 3 times before crying, not because of sadness, but because of how gentle it was. Most people would have demanded answers. He gave her space instead. Weeks passed. Tabloids moved on to news stories. But something in Sandra didn't. She missed the kindness he brought, the way he spoke slowly like every word mattered. Yet, she was scared that going back would mean opening the door for chaos again. Then one night, she saw something that stopped her breath. Keanu appeared on a talk show, the first one he had done in months. The host, trying to be clever, brought up the rumor about them. The internet thinks you and Sandra Bullock are finally a couple, the host said with a grin. The audience laughed. Cameras zoomed in. Everyone waited for a reaction. Keanu smiled faintly. That quiet smile that hid more than it revealed. The internet thinks a lot of things, he said softly. The host pressed on. So there's nothing going on between you two. He looked down for a moment, then said, Sandra is one of the best people I've ever known. If kindness was a person, it would be her. We've shared moments that I'll never forget. But not everything beautiful needs to be owned by the world. The audience fell silent. The host blinked. No jokes came next. Because sometimes, truth doesn't need humor. It just needs to be heard. The clip spread everywhere. Millions watched. But this time, something different happened. People didn't gossip. They listened. They called it the most respectful answer ever given on television. Sandra watched it alone at home, her heart heavy and full all at once. She picked up her phone but didn't know what to write. Every word felt too small. Finally, she typed, You never fail to be the calm in the storm. He replied minutes later, That's because storms remind me of you, strong, loud, honest, and gone before they destroy anything good. For a long time, she stared at that message. And that night, for the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully. Yet something inside her whispered that peace never stays forever. Because in a world where love is hunted for attention, quiet connections always risk being misunderstood. And neither of them knew that the biggest test of their bond was still waiting. Something that would force them to choose between what was true and what the world wanted to believe. When truth became the enemy, it happened on a gray morning in early spring. The city was waking up, but the news had already begun its storm. Sandra woke to 100 missed calls, buzzing notifications, and headlines that twisted everything she and Keanu had tried to protect. Someone had leaked personal photos, quiet moments, never meant for anyone else. One showed them sitting on his porch, laughing over coffee. Another, him handing her a small flower. Innocent, gentle, but turned into lies by cruel captions. Keanu and Sandra caught hiding secret romance. Private meetings revealed. Betrayal of trust. Who leaked the truth? Sandra felt her heart drop as she scrolled. Even the most harmless image had been turned into a weapon. The media spun stories faster than she could breathe. They called her desperate. They called him cold again. They wrote love stories out of stillness and betrayal out of silence. By noon, the noise was everywhere. Reporters camped outside her gate. Drones hovered above Keanu's driveway. Every network wanted a statement that she called him. No answer. Panic rose in her chest. What if he blamed her? What if he thought she'd let this happen? Finally, he texted, "I'm not angry, but we should talk in person." That evening, she drove to his house. The press followed from a distance, their headlights flashing like fireflies that refused to die. When she reached his gate, it opened slowly, just enough for her car to slip in. He was waiting on the porch, wearing a gray sweater, calm but tired. "Keanu," she began. "I swear I didn't." He raised a hand gently. "I know, Sandra. I know you didn't." "Then how?" "Someone close to one of our sets, maybe. Maybe just a neighbor." "It doesn't matter." His voice was steady, but his eyes looked distant, as if the world had taken something sacred from him. "It does matter," she said softly. "They turned something pure into a headline." He nodded slowly. "They always do. I can release a statement," she offered quickly. "Say it's fake. Deny everything." He shook his head. "No. Denial only feeds noise." "Then what do we do?" She whispered. "Nothing." He said simply. "We do nothing." "But Keanu, there, let them talk." He interrupted softly. "Truth doesn't need a defense. It just needs time." His calm should have soothed her, but it didn't. It scared her. She felt helpless. "How can you stay so quiet?" she asked. "How can you just sit there when they're tearing you apart?" He looked at her with the same steady eyes that had once made her feel safe. "Because I've learned that loud people break faster. Silence lasts." She wanted to believe him, but the world outside was cruel and loud, and she was tired of being misunderstood. 2 days later, her publicist released a short statement anyway. "Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves are longtime friends and collaborators. Please respect their privacy." It was polite, controlled, and harmless, or so she thought. But the internet twisted it again. People said longtime friends was a cover-up. Memes spread, jokes were made, and the story grew bigger. That night, Keanu called her. His voice was quiet, but different, not angry, just tired. "You released a statement," he said softly. "I had to," she whispered. "They wouldn't stop. I told you." He said. Silence was enough. "Silence wasn't working," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't understand what it's like to be the woman in these stories. They always make me the villain, and they always make me the mystery," he said. "But maybe that's who we are to them. Stories they can't finish." She wiped her tears. "You sound like you've already given up." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "No. I just stopped trying to win battles that don't exist." "Keanu, Sandra," he interrupted softly, "don't let them make you hate your own heart. What they say doesn't matter. What we know does." Her voice trembled. "And what do we know?" He took a breath. "That we cared, quietly, in a world that only listens when people scream." Her tears fell faster now. "So what happens next?" "We wait," he said, "and we keep being kind, even when the world isn't." The line went quiet. That days turned into weeks. The noise finally began to fade. New stories replaced theirs, but something between them had changed, not broken, just paused. Too many words unsaid, too many feelings trapped beneath caution. Then, one night, Sandra saw something unexpected on social media. It was Keanu's account again. One simple post. A photo of the ocean at dawn, soft light spilling across calm waves. His caption read, "Truth doesn't defend itself. It simply survives." She stared at it for a long time, her hand trembling. The world called it poetic, but she knew what it really was, an answer. An answer to the chaos, to the misunderstanding, to her heart. He wasn't angry. He wasn't hurt. He was reminding her that real love, even unspoken, undefined love, didn't need noise to exist. It only needed honesty. And maybe silence was their language after all. Asterisk the letter that changed everything that's past, and the world finally stopped talking about them. The headlines faded, the pictures disappeared from the internet, and the noise that once filled their lives turned into silence again. A silence that was no longer heavy, just quiet, like the end of a storm. Sandra had gone back to work, pouring herself into new scripts, new roles, new smiles. But even on the busiest days, something inside her felt unfinished. She missed their late-night talks, the gentle calm of his voice, the way his words always sounded like they were carrying peace. She tried not to think about him. But one evening, as she walked into her trailer after filming, she found an envelope sitting on her table. Her name was written in familiar handwriting, neat, patient, careful. Her heart skipped. She opened it slowly, the paper trembling in her hands. Inside was a letter. Dear Sandra, I hope this reaches you on a quiet day. I know things have been heavy. I know the world tried to turn what was real into something we didn't recognize. But I also know that truth has a way of waiting for the right moment to be heard. I want you to know I never blamed you for anything. Not for the interviews, not for the noise, not even for the silence that followed. I've learned that sometimes love isn't a story. It's a place we return to when everything else stops making sense. You were that place for me. Even when we drifted, even when the world made us characters in their version of reality. I still remembered the first time we laughed over burnt coffee on set. You didn't see it, but that day, you saved me from the loneliness I had been living in for years. The truth is, I was never cold. I was scared to be seen, scared to lose something good again. But you always saw past that, and maybe that's why I could never explain myself properly. Because you already understood without words. If the world ever asks again who we were, let them guess. We'll know the answer, to people who didn't need to shout to be heard. Always. Sandra sat there for a long time, her eyes filling with tears that refused to fall. She read the letter again and again, each line softer, deeper, more real than the last. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a love story for the cameras. It was something purer, a truth between two people who had lived enough life to know that words are not always the measure of love. She didn't call him right away. She didn't post anything or write a response for the world. Instead, she did what he would have done. She waited for the right moment. 2 weeks later, they met again. No red carpets, no interviews. Just two old friends sitting in a quiet park as the sun sank behind the trees. He smiled when he saw her. You got my letter, he said. She nodded. I did, and she smiled faintly. It made me angry. He raised an eyebrow. Angry that you always find the perfect words when I can't. He laughed softly, and she joined him. The sound felt natural, familiar, like a memory that had never really ended. So what now? He asked. We stop letting other people tell our story, she said. And maybe we start living it, quietly, just like we always have. He nodded slowly. Quiet is good. Quiet is real, she said. They sat there in silence for a while, watching the sky change color. Then she reached into her bag and handed him an envelope. What's this? He asked. My letter, she said softly. He opened it. Inside, just one line written in her handwriting. You weren't cold, Keanu. You were the warmth I was too blind to feel. His eyes lifted to meet hers, full of something wordless but powerful. For once, neither of them needed to explain anything. The next morning, a single post appeared on Sandra's account. A photo of the same park bench under the golden evening light. The caption said, some stories don't need an ending. They just need peace. No tags, no names, no drama. And the world, for once, didn't argue. People shared it, calling it beautiful, timeless, pure. But only two people knew what it really meant. Weeks later, Sandra and Keanu were spotted together again, this time not on a red carpet, not hiding, just walking side by side down a quiet street, laughing softly like they used to. No cameras followed. No rumors came after. Because finally, the story everyone wanted had become something they could never own. Private, quiet, real. And in that silence, where the world finally looked away, love stayed.